Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Satsang. Let's make some silence first. So good morning once again. Welcome. Let's talk about a little bit about human love. So many love stories, romantic stories, poems, so many things have been written, lived, experienced through human love. And it's probably the most important human experience of all. And human love gets enshrined in a high place where it seems to be the most beautiful thing. But that's when you believe, or you want to believe, or you need to believe the story. Because as you move further and further, you will tend to see that that beauty is not what it seems. It is, but it isn't. So whenever there's the experience, the burst of love, it is grace, it is beauty, it is overwhelming because it is beautiful. But then unescapable, this word I cannot say it, probably doesn't exist. But as you cannot escape it, your own level of impurities starts piling up, coming again. There was this burst that put all those impurities aside. It was by far bigger than those impurities. But as that love remains there, those impurities start to gain over it again and starts to twist it. So love gets reduced, 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 and what eventually remains is dry land. In Raja Yoga, it is called mental impurities. And it is shown many, many different ways to deal with it and to bring the mind to its pure state, and that is a clean state, an empty state, devoid of impurities, of agitations, fears, desires, all of this, which are the mental impurities, and that they are the birth seeds of suffering, of dishonoring love, of all mother of all painful experiences of human life. In the quest for truth, it is more or less the same. Eventually, love will be there, will rise, and also the impurities. Because there's no liberation without rising high above your impurities, leaving them behind, returning to your pure state. And this is made by constant decisions. So as it is shown in Raja Yoga, until the mind gets purified, it cannot reflect the purity of the soul. And why is this important? Well, it is important for many reasons. But sooner or later, your loving capabilities will be put to test so that you have the opportunity to cleanse, to remove the impurities, to leave them behind. And that only love does it. So what does this mean? Love is there, it may be pure, but then all your fears, desires jump in front of it, trying to establish the same mechanics lived again and again and again and again. So instead of surrendering to love, embracing that love, and putting everything aside, that love starts to get to be used in the same way as other things were used previously. But in the quest for truth, it is a little bit different. Maybe not in the experience, because as this happens with human love, love fades, loses its strength. But as this happens with divine love, there's the disrespect involved, the not honoring that presence, that sacred presence in your heart. And this can lead it to disappear. And then it may or may not, but it may take a while to come back. God is the hand that takes you back to your natural state, to purity. But purity not as an individual, that's just a step of the journey, a needed step of the journey. With the impersonal aspect of love, of God, it is difficult to establish the same relationship. It is too far away, and you are too small for it. So your greed, your desires, your fears, either they don't appear or they are still projected somewhere else, and that doesn't do the trick. So either through God or Guru, you will be exposed to more or less the same kinds of relationships, so that you have the opportunity to make better, different decisions based on the highest principles instead of the lowest ones. So that means when your fears, desires, greeds are arising, you have a choice to make. What will you feed? Your mind will be saying one thing, wanting you to do certain things. The heart stays still. Choices. Your choices of today, more or less, they open the path for tomorrow. So whatever you're observing today has to do with the choices you have made previously. It's not absolute reality. So if you're not where you want it to be at this point, at this moment, and you want to know why, you need to look back to the different decisions you've made, because you know better than anyone how faithful you were to that love, how honest, devoted. The tendency of the mind is to always reveal perfection of actions, purity of actions, to exalt the highest of the actions. But that's not clarifying. Because usually, what brings you down is not what you've done correctly, but what you've done incorrectly, not accordingly to the highest principles. So this is what you need to find out so that you can realign. Quest for truth is not an escape for low self-esteem, for negative thoughts about oneself. It is not. These are just obstacles on the way to liberation. These are the conditioning points that strapped you to illusion, to suffering. So pay attention to this. God wants those who want Him only, for Him only, not for His glories. Those who want His glories, well, His glories are abundant, whatever that means. Each one is free to choose the ones they want, whatever that means, according to different levels of perceptions. I want to read a question, then we'll come back to this. I will answer your question now. Je vais répondre à ta question. Dear Sriman, I was able to listen with the subtitles to the last Satsang. Indeed, I'm in the first part of the way, this difficult part, and it enlightens and strengthens my determination to continue. I would like to be sure that I understood one point. Negativity and positivity are two sides of the same coin, the coin of illusion. Yes. Especially because negativity and positivity, they only exists in the eyes of the blind, and they are very relative to your backgrounds, to your opinions, to your concepts, and everybody knows that something which is positive for one, it is negative for the other, and vice versa. So these are just mechanical, blind aspects that you follow without understanding and without no need to understand, because human life is based on blindness, human normal life. So the less you understand, the better, because if it gets too logical, it will reveal itself as nonsensical. So logic is also conditioned to your level of perception, to all these things. And it's easy to see this also. You just look back 1 year ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago. You would look at things through one perspective, with one logic, and it would make sense. And today you look at some of those things, they don't make sense anymore. Your logic has evolved. Your vision of the world has evolved. But it's still logic in your eyes, that the same that was there, that some you would die for them, and now more or less the same, and they was as true as they are now. Both have potential to slow down the release process, the freedom process. Yes, of course. And what is the most important? And to see the mechanisms that put in place these positive or negative aspects. Well, positives and negatives. They condition experience because they impel you or repel you. Simple as that. There's no need to make too much of confusion in it. And the means for purification is stillness, absence of investment. It is a mind that it's not impressed by any of these opposites. So these positives and negatives, they are impelling you and repelling you, impelling you to certain directions, repelling you to certain directions. And as you move blindly in a labyrinth, these forces that impel you and repel you, they are conditioning you to a specific vision of a world from which your world gets its own balance, frickle balance. So these are the hands that pulls the strings of the puppet, in which the puppet thinks he's making the decisions, what's right for him, what's wrong for him. And the direction is stillness. Also, I have the impression of seeing that I am at crossroads. Very surely. In recent weeks, I have been able to see certain attachments fallen. For example, in the relationship with my friend, special friend. And here is what I could call a new temptation. But in fact, there is nothing new. It's just a repetition of the same. Either I play the same circus of attachment again, or I want to kiss God, even though I don't know what that really means yet. Probably if you did, it wouldn't make much of a difference. Because the world of a character and the source, they are very different, very apart, very, very much apart. And the character belongs in its own circus. It finds no life, no purpose outside of his small, constricted, limited, painful world. He has no room outside of it. Like when you're in a dream, that dream body, the story where that body is, the world, the dream world, everything is one. It's not that you're put into a scenario and there's things happening in the scenario. Everything is one. The dreamer and the dream, they are the same. They appear and disappear at the same time. So in what you call reality is more or less the same. That body-mind complex is the dreamer. He is not inside the dream. He is the dream. He is as the dream. So in what appears to be happening, that's the story of that individual, unreal character. And it's in this story that he finds purpose, meaning. So when the quest for liberation comes, it is like moving outside its own story. So what he will try to do is to turn that old new story in the old story. That will be a fail. Or he will try to go back to his own story as he fails in the first attempt. Because transcending that story is very difficult, especially because of temptations. The biggest one, suffering. So there was nothing new in this story, but you could have called it a new story. You could. Probably you will still, because it will come back again. If it there still has a meaning, it will come back again. Maybe now that you have so many things in your control, you are able to let go. But when this control reduces, when you have lost so much, probably something that looked like now, when you look at it, unimportant, without any value, in different circumstances may appear to be precious. Appear, not in the evaluation, but in the reaction to it. So this depends a lot on circumstances. And it's quite common because, like I usually explain, first, illusion entertains you by depriving you of what you want. Then, illusion entertains you by giving you what you wanted prior to that. So in a sense, frustration makes the world revolve. In spirituality is not different. Frustration, suffering make people look for God. But usually it is just for relief, hope, not for God itself. And as you have nothing, what can you decide? What can you really choose? You will not know if God is really what you want, neither will God, and I assure you that God wants to know. So when you're getting closer and closer, God will give you those things you so much aspire to. But the way He's pulling you closer, surely, most of times, will not be in a sweet way. Because if it was sweet, sometimes it has to be bitter, because bitter and sweet, they are for the character only. And if it was just sweet, sweet, character will jump in. And that's simply not possible. So the bitter is for the character. But with the best eyes, that bitter is sweet because it offers the opportunity to transcend. And it's just bitter because you're attached to misery and suffering and you don't want to let go. So in these moments, God gives you something, puts something in your way to test, and for you to be able to see also what is the level of your purity, of the love of your purity, of your love for God. Is it really God that you want, or just a better dream / suffering? In human relationships, people tend to fake and to show only their best to attract the other, attracting them through their own greed and using their own projections to create that image. God doesn't want anything fake. He understands the level of their children, yes, and He gives them opportunities to grow. Because with all those impurities mounting in your heart, how will you be able to experience one insignificant piece of His glory inside of you? Has to be removed. God doesn't want any fake relationships. He wants only the pure ones. So these tests come along the way. Be sure of it when you least expect it. And like I explained previously, it is your decisions that open the path that you are observing at this moment. So even if I don't know where this leads, I cut with the old pattern of emotional attachment to stay on course. It's not finished yet, not over yet. It is just the beginning. It is just the beginning. But usually, the mechanics are always the same. It is the importance that things have to you that change along the course. This is what makes the change. Because the mechanics are more or less always the same. So for the seeker of truth that has endured, continued, observed, experienced, he will see that mechanisms are practically the same, lifeless. What binds me to illusion is death itself, and it has no meaning. So it gets easier and easier to go above. But this state of perception is the fruit of hard work, a lot of sacrifice and hard work. The only one who opens the way to God, the Course. This episode shows me that the mechanisms and issues in a romantic relationship. So much naiveness. Okay, so this is a question pertaining to meditation. And it was a question about, once I said that, not once, many times, longer periods of meditation are the best way to deepen your meditation. And this question was about this comment because the experience that you're having is that as time passes, it gets more and more difficult, tiring, and that deepening doesn't come. It's like the opposite. Well, but that is the way to deepen your meditation. Because what seems difficult and tiring is to maintain that stillness in the midst of your impurities that are lying, that are surfacing. Physical impurities, emotional impurities, mental impurities. And look, the seeker of truth path would be much more simple, by far much more simple, if he would learn to look at these manifestations, whatever they are, apart from stillness, as just impurities, either physical impurities, pain, that and restlessness, fruits of pain, of course, fruits of pain that are the fruits of density into the physical body, emotional whatever emotions are rising, impurities, whatever thoughts are coming, why the mind is not staying still because of impurities, of all these level different of impurities. So you're establishing silence in the midst of impurities, restlessness, agitation. It's like you pick up 3-year-old child that starts get agitated and running and doing a lot of things, messing around and this and that. Usually that tends to, when there's an adult confronting it, to make it stop because it is creating too much confusion, that usually to be able to work, it ends in some kind of a cry, a burst of tears, because it is a way to purge that agitation. But that adult will not be successful in the first time, the second time, the third time, because agitation is so intense that the child is not really listening, not being able to shift vibration. And in some way, in some form, it will have to be purged. Usually is through cry. It's a way of purging out to come back to a more stable state. So as you are, how do you say this? Bringing stillness, asserting stillness, that's better. All levels of agitation, the most superficial ones first, and then it goes deeper and deeper as you're in a more, as you prolong that state of stillness, of concentration in one point. That restlessness and agitation surface intensely. And as you keep the stillness, it is dissolving it, but not without a fight. Not without a fight, for sure. Why? Because all agitation that you're experiencing, it is the foundation of the world of the character, of your delusional world. If you lose that, you find yourself in a different world. And it cannot be too different, because where is your motivation? Where is your sense of belonging? Where is your sense of missing the word? But all that drives your sense of purpose, it disappears. It cannot disappear, because this endangers everything. So there's a fight in you to let go, and a fight in you to maintain it. And eventually you have to choose a side. Usually you just let it blindly. You're just justifying that which you're making, that it is fighting against stillness. And by the other part, you exalt that which you're doing correct, aligned with stillness. Like if the discussion was more important than the actual fruits of the work that you're doing. And it is a very exhaustive process. But usually that war in the battlefield, in your silence, in your intimate space, didn't start there. The most important part of it was there prior to meditation and your day-to-day activities, into which side you had been feeding. And this is then what makes a lot of the difference. Still, that fight has to happen. But if you haven't been taking care of it prior to that, with utmost care, It will be frustrating. It will be difficult, and it will seem impossible. And that's a very good thing. Very important thing for the character, of course, because like that, he can justify the existence of himself in that world because there's nothing that he can do to go beyond it and blah, 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 blah. That's what he says when he's still in some comfort place, when the suffering comes from his path of liberation. And then, of course, let me escape this suffering, this frustration, this emptiness, and hold on to that what I only have in a justifiable way. But what happens then into the next cycle is, as he starts to collect the fruits of this decision, the intensity of the suffering and all of that motivates him again to resume that quest and la la la. And he forgot what he said. Oh, I'm not worthy. It's not possible for me. Because he is not a thinking entity. There's movement, there are thoughts, but there's no thought process. He's just being impelled towards his attractions and being repelled as he experienced suffering, not questioning how he got there, what were the paths to arrive there. No, just automatic, just running. You know that image of someone just screaming and running? That's a normal person in a normal life. Everything, the mind comes, jumps in, and says just blah, 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 to make that running possible without any real conscious analytic process involved. Because when that appears, it is known there's nowhere to run. There's no other way around. But surprisingly, a clear fact as this one takes sometimes lifetimes to be achieved. As you go through these battles and you learn to improve your skills and you learn how to remove the food from this character's mouth and direct it towards the unknown for you, but embracing the faith and the love from your heart, embracing the highest values, something new may rise. And as you assert more and more that stillness, that silence, rejecting these mechanisms, old mechanisms, known mechanisms, that only get some brightness because of the hope that you put on top of them. Even that hope, it comes to a point that it is reduced a lot, but it's still better than nothing. First, you were grabbing things because they were very shiny. Then, as your vision improves, it will be more decadent, even because there's no brightness. You don't see the shining anywhere, but still you have to grab it. Probably that happens with addictions, like drug addiction. First it's very good, takes you very high. Then it's decadency, it is destroying you, and you have to embrace it again and again. So in meditation, as you are observing this conflict, these difficulties, so where is the deepening? Okay, I'm sitting for 3 hours, getting more and more tired, more and more tired. First of all, who's getting tired in that story? Oh, the same bird that's want to run here and there. That's that small three-year-old child. And if you look at it, prior to meditation, what is he feeding? What is he contemplating? What are the little things he is taking to itself still? Because if it is fighting, it is strong. If it is strong, it has been receiving food. Clear. And if the other side is not as strong, it has been receiving less food. Clear. So just looking at what you want to believe is different from looking at facts, experiences. But eventually, if you persist, and by persisting, it means that awareness has to come about certain things, and you have to remove those behaviors. Then you'll see it was a long, it's like diving deep into the ocean. If you're jumping into the water without any weights, you will have to battle the water pressure because it will pull you up. Meditation is the same. Focus, intense focus and care with all daily activities, with all the doors, the sense impressions. This is the weights that make you go deeper and deeper and deeper, despite the pressure of water. If you're not taking care of those things, you'll be fighting against that pressure and eventually it pulls you up again and again and again and again until you get to that famous conclusion. It's not for me. I can't do this. Let me just go back and relieve myself so that I can suffer again and then hope again for a different thing. And again 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 until the extinction of dinosaurs, the creation of them again, and so many things. And time flies, goes, comes, and just pain, suffering, and emptiness. That emptiness, that suffering is not God's punishment. It is not. It's just the fruits of your understanding, of your maturity. Because first you put those bright colors on top of things that don't have them, because you don't know anything better. Then you get the actual taste of what things are. And that's revealing. But even that experience is not enough to counter your hopes about things. This is what makes you renew the same investments. Because you're not thinking, not analyzing completely, not slightly even. To be able to sit longer and longer, you will have to make changes. You cannot maintain the same habits, the same habit patterns, not only in your daily activities. This is still outward, still important, but outward. It's the thoughts you entertain. It's the emotions you entertain. It's the hopes into the future based on the circumstances that you know, that you entertain. And this is what needs to change. Because either you find the ways to dive deep, or gravity will expel you and pull you out. With 1 hour of meditation, you can concile many things. With 2 hours of meditation, there are less things you can conciliate with that. With 3 hours of meditation, there's many less things you can maintain at the same time from both worlds. With 4 hours of meditation, even less. So either the time sitting increases and the investment in illusion decreases, or vice versa. Because yes, you can still improve your skills of conciliation, but as time sitting increases, it's more difficult, more difficult, more difficult. For the seeker of truth, this is hope. It is a path. For the seeker of well-being, it is unbearable. Again, a choice. Which one do I embrace? One will suffer. Both will suffer. But one suffering leads to liberation, leads to God, leads to truth. The other suffering just keeps me here bound. Meditation is not a static thing. When it becomes static, it means it has become a part of the day, of your life, of illusion. It's not become the life. And it loses its potential, becomes worldly. Meditation has to increase. So your focus in meditation, it's not just about, oh, let me do just 1 hour or 2 hours and let me fulfill this calendar and that's it. No, you need to, I'm doing 1 hour. I need to increase it. Strive. Because if I'm doing 1 hour, it's because 1 hour and 5 minutes is too much. So this is what I'm pointing at. 1 hour, 5 minutes, 1 hour, 10 minutes. If I'm doing 2 hours, it means that 2 hours and 5 minutes or 2 hours and 30 seconds is unbearable. I barely reach those 2 hours. That means that I'm going into my limit over and over again. And sometimes you're blessed, and if you're doing 2 hours, you will sit for 3 hours, 3.5, 4 hours in a row, and you go, whoa, what is this? How did this happen? And this is a blessing for you to see that much more is possible, that you're not alone. But then you go back to the same state, but you have vision. Now you have direction, horizon, and you work towards that horizon. It's much easier when you have horizon. And what's really happening is high values rising against lower values, stillness against agitation, God against world. And you're in the middle making the decisions. So there's an image that usually is presented about the organization of the world, the structures, that has the gods on top, the humans, the human world as in the middle, and the demons world in the lower. the same image of the angel and the devil, and you're in the middle. And are you rising or are you sinking? And where is it closer to God? Where is it more far away from God? These are just examples for reflection, for decision makings. Stillness means, eventually will mean, absence of investments in illusion and embracing, surrendering fully, completely to God. So there's a process involved, a battle. And before entering the battlefield, who were you feeding? Who were you helping? That determines the outcome of the battle, more or less. Okay. So that's it for today. Next satsang will be Wednesday, 9:30 in the morning, Brazilian time, UTC -3. Until then, as usual, make the best use of your time. Make it count. Make it real.